Hello and welcome to the Press Start podcast, Press Start Australia's weekly video game discussion podcast. I'm your host, Ewan, joined today by my fellow gamers and co-hosts, Shannon,
Hello.
James,
Hello.
and Kieran.
Hello.
Shannon, you're already looking disappointed that I'm back in the hosting chair. Did I blow out your eardrums with that
You
introduction?
did. I was quickly reading something else and you really gave me a fright on this Halloween.
It's just the change of price that I bring, you know?
Yeah.
On the show this week, we're going to be discussing our thoughts on Alan Wake 2, Shannon's time playing Avatar: The Frontiers of Pandora, some unfortunate news coming out of Bungie, and our first look at Metal Gear Solid 3 Remake gameplay. But first, James, you reviewed Star Ocean this week. How did you find the game?
Oh, we're starting with that, are we? Yeah, it's good. I really enjoyed it. It's I say to my review, but I feel like Star Ocean has always been like one of my favorite series, but like it hasn't really got as much appreciation as say Final Fantasy. And I do think Star Ocean has kind of stayed true to what it was like back. It's still kind of the same game. So when they announced they were doing Star Ocean 2, like as a proper remake, I was kind of like, oh yeah, cool. Like it'll be a fun experience, I guess, to play that on a modern console. But playing it like it's actually like a proper remake. Like it doesn't look. It's like obviously not full 3D. It's still like that kind of Octopath like HD 2D look. But like they've just done so much to it. They've really like, I guess, like broken it open and kind of seen what they can make work for like a more modern audience and like streamline the whole process. Because the old game obviously had just like a battle system where you kind of just mashed cast some spells. The spells would often pause the battles and stuff too, but now it's like all streamlined. Like all the spells like actually play out, and the combat's all been rebalanced for that too.
Yeah.
But on top of that, like they've added like a break system, like an armor break system that wasn't in the original. So, there's just a little bit more nuance and depth to the combat now. You don't just mash A to get through stuff, which is really cool. It's just it's a really solid effort, and I was like really shocked at how far they went with it in terms of, even things like the battles used to be, they would just like randomly attack you like Pokemon, almost like the old Final Fantasies as well. But in this, like enemies now appear on the map and you can avoid them if you want and stuff, or you can fast forward cutscene. It's just like all of the things that are kind of have become staples in like modern RPGs. They've kind of gone back and retrofitted them into this old 1998 PS1 game.
Yeah. You were showing me
like,
some of the visuals as well throughout the week, kind of comparison of like the original PS1 game versus how they've kind of recreated the same scenes today. How much did that influence your experience of the game as well?
I think it like a lot. Obviously, it's kind of stuff where I remember this scene from the original, right? But then I actually went back and I was like, oh wait, this was actually like super flat in the old game. Like there's one scene where like you walk into this castle town and they're like, oh my god, this is the big castle town Lakua or whatever. It looks so big and great. But in like the PS1 version, they're just standing in some dirty alley and there's like no like camera or anything like that. But in this one, it's got like this big, like wide sweeping camera angle of the whole town and stuff. And I know it's like really small stuff, but it does. I feel like a lot of people would play this and probably wouldn't think it was ever a PS1 game now. Do you know what I mean? Like that's the kind of degree of, like, I guess a redo that it's got. Because a lot of games, like obviously I'm playing MGS1 right now, and like, you can tell that was a PS1 game. Like it's a, like it has that feel to it. But yeah, this is like a really, really clever way, I guess, to make it not tedious. Because I feel like a lot of those games were so long because there was so much like traveling between places and random battles and all that kind of stuff. But like this obviously has like fast travel. You can fast travel to specific shops even in each of the towns. Like it's got a lot of just like time saving things that like, let's be honest, in the original games they weren't really adding much to the experience. They were literally just adding hours.
I love some of those like quality of life improvements that come via the way of a remake, and I wonder if it's something kind of like unique to remake, seeing as it's a game we've played before, or like a good percentage of the players playing it have played before, and they kind of know the story. So just in an effort to kind of move through the experience quicker and kind of get the most enjoyment out of it, I think those quality of life improvements are a really nice addition. That's nice to hear.
It is.
Yeah. That's cool. Is there James, speaking of time saving, is there like improvements to
Like I know that in the original game, it was really easy to miss stuff, like
Yeah.
conversations or like cutscenes or whatever. Is it like
So this is like another thing that, like, once again I like to talk about in my review is the in the original Star Ocean 2, you needed a guide. There was literally no way to be able to understand like what to do. Like you might have just spoken to someone, but then you've got to go back 2 towns and speak to someone else to be able to like get some kind of, relationship conversation unlocked or something. But in this game, there's like it's got a full map, like a full world map, and then individual town maps. And on them, it shows you where all of the things that you can miss are now. And it tells you if there's something that's time sensitive, like you might, if you go and fight in a tournament, you might miss some conversations that can be had earlier on. But it actually tells you that these are limited time things. So make sure you do them first if you want to do them. Because that's such a big part of Star Ocean 2 is, when you go into a town, you can kind of split up and go chat with each individual party member and work on your relationship with them. And that will kind of affect how the endings and stuff play out. So, yes,
That's
there is.
awesome.
Yeah, I like my first run on this. I think was like 30 to 40 hours, which is like way less than when I played on PS1, to do everything. But that's not because there's less content here. It's just because you can streamline everything you're doing so much quicker. Yeah,
Nice.
but I really like. I really recommend, like, if you like RPGs and you like anything, if you've played a Tales game and you've never quite wanted to get, like, you never had played a Star Ocean game yet, like, there is a lot of crossover there. I personally prefer Star Ocean to Tales. That's probably controversial. But yeah, like, it's definitely worth it. If you like RPGs, it's really good. It's the best Star Ocean game, like, far and away. And I think the best way to play it too. And it's like, the retail price is like 69, which is like nuts. Like that's so
Nice.
cheap for how much extra work has gone into it. Yeah, good one.
Sounds like a steal to me.
It is a steal, Shani. You should try it. Broaden your horizons a bit.
It's
Get some
almost
culture into you.
disappointing to hear at this point of the year that there's more good games like still coming out. Like enough is enough. They're just like we need
Yeah.
some bad games. I just need to
We've
not
had some
worry about
duds.
not playing. You
Like,
know,
Have you seen,
We've
maybe
had-
you should play the King Kong one that just dropped.
True.
And Gollum.
Go back and play some Gollum. Fair. Well, let's hope that Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora doesn't have the same fate as the King Kong game awaiting it. But the best person to ask at this point in time would be Shannon, who submitted a preview to the website this past week. Now, seeing as I always get previews confused, was this a hands-on preview? Did you have a controller in your hand?
I
You were
did.
able to
I
play
think
it?
I even put it in the title, hands-on preview. I probably didn't, but hopefully I did.
No, I think you did. It
Um,
just shows how much attention
No,
I paid.
it was.
Hands and feet on, if you will.
Yeah, exactly
Wow.
right. I'm 99% sure it was the first like 4 missions of the game, so it was very much like the start of the game, but like it was chopped up to fit into like a 2-hour session.
Cool.
But yeah, it's kind of what you would expect this game to be. Like, even if you hadn't seen anything or you hadn't heard anything about it and you thought, what would this game be? It's essentially a first-person game in the vein of like Far Cry. The world feels sort of it feels like a Far Cry, but there's more variety in it, I would say. Like, so it feels like a range of Far Cry games. And the gunplay, even though you obviously have weapons from both sides of the Avatar franchise in guns and bows, it feels like Far Cry, which I think it's not necessarily a bad thing. And I like Far Cry games, but I just feel like Avatar as a property is so unique. And like, you think of the Na'vi and like how big they are in the world, like when you see them in the movie, and you don't really get that sense of scale here because it is first person when you're on
Right.
foot until you're in the air. So whilst it's not a bad thing that it feels like Far Cry, because obviously Far Cry games are great, it doesn't feel unique in the sense that like if you just put a controller in someone's hand and told them this was Far Cry, like they would believe it.
Yeah.
So
I
I
guess
don't know,
like,
which I'm
considering
seeing.
we've had Far Cry Primal as well, like it would,
Yeah, I said that in my
not totally
preview as well.
different.
Like the boat, like the Na'vi weapons feel like Primal, and obviously the guns feel like the more recent,
Yeah.
insane over the top Far Cry games.
It's kind of
but yeah.
surprising because like Massive haven't made a Far Cry game, if I'm not mistaken, right? Haven't they? Like they're best known for the Division games.
I feel like Ubi are pretty like I don't know. There's like a lot of studios, and I feel like a lot of them are hands on deck for a lot of projects. So like even if they're not leading on something, I feel like a lot of the tech is used.
Yeah, I'm sure
Massive
there's lots
big
of
game
tech sharing
is
as well.
The Division, though. Like, that's the game that they've led and done the best with, I would say.
Which kind of that
And
confuses
they're
me
also
even
doing
more because they're
Outlaws.
all there's no
Mm.
first party in the Division, is there? It's all third party. A third. What's the word I'm looking for?
Third
Third
person.
person.
Third
Yes,
person.
yeah,
Third
yeah.
person.
yeah,
No,
it's
there's
all
no
third
first
person.
person.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
I don't.
And it's
that
cover-based.
confuses me because
So Star
Again,
Wars.
I don't really understand it. I just feel like third person. I'm sure they tried it at some point and maybe it just looked ridiculous or it didn't work and they couldn't get the scaling right.
On paper, this feels like a situation where kind of money is like traded hands, and it's like, right, who's got spare capacity here? Okay, massive do. Because it kind of just feels like sandwiched in a little bit between like Division 2 and Outlaws, as
it's
James
even
pointed out, it's out next year as well.
I said this at the preview to sort of Ubisoft, and I think I said it in my preview as well, that like the timing of it even feels weird. Like if this had come out around the movie last year, which it could have been scheduled for release, I just feel like the hype and it makes so much more sense. Where shoving it out in December, it does very much feel like they just have to get it out, and that's not to say it's going to be awful. I don't think it's going to be decent, but it does. I don't know. The Avatar franchise is weird. Like between the original coming out and 2, like who ever thought about it or spoke about Avatar? Like there was no reason to, right? But then the sequel still did insanely well. So I don't know. Maybe there is a market for this.
Kieran, to bring you into the convo, given how big this year has been for games, and conscious that we've already had like a Assassin's Creed Mirage out recently as well, like, do you have much of an appetite for a typical sort of Ubisoft brand of game? Like, if it is as much like Far Cry as Shannon's describing, is that something you're likely to have a hankering to play come December 7th? I think the game is out.
I think so, because like I don't know, I feel like I've played so many really, really, really good games this year that the idea of just like an average open world Ubisoft game kind of appeals to me.
Yeah,
Like
no, I get that. Like so many
Yeah.
people are the same, I'm sure.
Do you mean
Yeah,
average
and
like as quality or like average as in like just
By the books.
you know
Both.
typical? Yeah. Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah, I don't know, and the setting appeals as well. Like I do like that
Yeah.
franchise in terms of
and-
like the world.
Yeah,
That struck out as the biggest thing. Like I said, there's a lot of variety in locations, and like even in my hour or two with the game, like I saw that many different wildlife, creature, beast type things, ranging from like huge dinosaur like things to small bugs. And there's a lot of like cooking and picking fruits and different things. So like it is leaning more into that than Far Cry has, like the world and living off the world and things like stamina in it. Like there are differences, but yeah, I just
what is
wish
the
there was a little bit
flying
more.
mechanics like? Did you get to play much of that? Does
Yeah,
that feel good?
it's pretty cool. So like you can jump off anywhere and like call the Banshee, as James liked to put it when I wrote what it was actually called.
It is a
yesterday.
They're called banshees to normal people. Like, I'm not a Navi, so I don't speak in
You
Navi
could've
like you
fooled
claim to
me.
be. Yeah, yeah.
Wait, what are they called in Navi?
He doesn't even know,
I
see?
can't even remember now. But you can
I think
name it.
it's-
I named it Floof, so let's just call it Floof from this point on.
Okay.
The flying feels good. Like it, and yeah, it does
It's
give you a
called
real
Ikran.
sense of scale. Ikran.
Just so you know.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can once you've tamed it, which was like a big chunk of my gameplay was like climbing this mountain, which felt like Horizon Call of the Mountain in first person. And then once that moment happens, you can fly it anywhere. Again, there's stamina and you have to feed it and things like that. But yeah, air combat's there. So yeah, there are differences. Like I don't want to sell it short as like a Far Cry clone, because like whenever you talk about like PlayStation games or like there's always going to be some familiarity, right? But yeah, there's some differences. I just hope that holds up over like 40 or 50 hours, which I'm guessing being an open world Ubisoft game, that's what this is going to be. And that's what I'm not 100% sure about. Like I enjoyed my time with it. But as you touched on, there's so many games, and like December, people are still going to be catching up on things like Alan Wake and whatever else has dropped. Like I just, I hope that there's enough here that people pick it up and enjoy it.
Yeah, and that might well be the case come December, where people are kind of able to play through everything else they otherwise wanted to.
The combat was fun. Like the core loop, again, I only got to play a few missions, but like it felt solid as Far Cry is as well.
Is
Like
it
Kieran said,
violent? Is it
yeah,
like blood
there's
and stuff?
explosions and I wouldn't say blood, but
When
like the
there's
people in the mechs, like you can headshot and like you see them fall in the mech. Like it's like Far Cry, like
I
it's
don't.
over the
There's no like
top.
gore.
No, like
Because
you're
Far
not.
Cry, you
No,
like stab people in the neck and shit. Like, there's nothing like that.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
assuming, right?
no, it felt less realistic than that. Like a
I'd
bit
imagine,
goofy
given the
almost.
target audience, that would be kind of toned down. Like this would be an
It
M
felt
as
more
opposed
like
to an MA. I would feel that
yeah.
would aim for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyhow, thank you for sharing your preview, Shannon. Do look out for the full review nearer the time, but you can read Shannon's full thoughts on Avatar Frontiers of Pandora over on the website now, where you will also find Brody's review of Alan Wake 2. This kind of fell in an awkward time. We weren't able to discuss it last week, and unfortunately, Brody's not able to join us today to discuss it. But James and I have both played a little bit. I'm certainly eager to talk about it. Brody did, by the way, give it a 9.5 out of 10. So another game that I would have thought is in contention for Game of the Year. But James, is that your opinion? Is this another Game of the Year contender in your eyes?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Is it my personal game of the year? I don't know, but
I will say at this point, it is like a real hard decision for me. It's like, what is my favorite game of this year? Kieran was hearing about this the other day. I was like bouncing back and forth between a couple of games. Anyhow, carry on.
I just said yes. That's it. No, but,
what do you like so much about it? Why is it in contention?
What do I like about Alan Wake 2? I like a lot of things about Alan Wake 2.
Alan himself.
Yeah, Alan Wake 2. No, it's just it's similar to Kojima and even like Sam Barlow, where you kind of forget that they have such a good sense of like direction until you play their games, and obviously I loved Control. Like I loved that game so much, and I liked Quantum Break, and to a lesser extent the first Alan Wake, which I still think is their worst game, but the story is good. But anyway, yeah, so like this just feels like I guess like an amalgamation of everything they've kind of been working towards in a way. Like obviously you had Max Payne and Quantum Break kind of refined all that gameplay stuff. Alan Wake had the real storytelling thing. This really feels like, and then Control had the kind of mixed it. And then Alan Wake really takes all of that stuff and kind of turns it into this really, really amazing like horror thriller experience that I don't think I've really experienced anything like it before. It is definitely borrowing really liberally from a lot of things like Twin Peaks, True Detective, all that kind of stuff. But it still manages to kind of give it its own twist, to be its own thing. It's kind of interesting as well to watch the trailers and the footage for this game, like back when Quantum Break was a thing, because they clearly had plans to do what they did in this game. I'm trying not to like ruin anything, like there's like so much you need to not know.
This is such a really hard game to talk about without kind of delving into spoilers.
Even just like playing as, obviously you've got two characters. Saga stuff is obviously in the real world, and that is a much more like I guess visceral kind of like horror kind of experience. Like you're in the woods, it's very quiet, it's creepy. There's something about it. It's all about a cult who rips people's hearts out. Like it's something more realistic. Then obviously you go to Alan's stuff, and that's much more like psychological. It's more like all over the place. There's a lot of dream logic happening there and stuff. And just being able to balance those two styles really well, I think, is what makes it so special. And then mixing into that all of this live action footage and stuff, that doesn't feel out of place. Like I feel like any other game couldn't get away with this, but for some reason this game does.
It kind of contextualizes it within the world of the game, though, because it blurs so many lines. Like again, I'm trying to stay clear of any spoilers, but this is all kind of referenced in the original Alan Wake. But like blurring the lines between like the fictional TV show and the real or fictional events kind of happening in the game, like that, I think contextualizes the full motion video for me. I don't know. Maybe I'm drawing parallels that aren't there.
No, I know what you, but I think this game can also really pull it off because it looks so good. Like it's
Yeah.
really, it
Yeah.
feels like one of
Oh,
those games where it does feel next gen.
yeah.
Which is weird to think when all these massive developers are doing stuff like that aren't even on this level, but then Remedy just pops this out and it looks amazing.
Yeah.
It feels mainly polished. There are some issues which we might get to later. Like I know you've hit a pretty big one. I've had a few
Hmm.
regular ones in terms of like gameplay and polish, but they've already pushed out 2 patches that have fixed a lot of the issues that I was having. So they seem to be pretty like committed, or they already knew what the problems were. But overall, like I think I don't know if it's as scary as say like the first time I played like RE7 or something. But I think this is a really solid horror game with probably the best story um, in a horror game I think that I've probably ever played. Maybe I'm trying to think, but
Big call.
it definitely is. It's a story first game first and foremost.
Yeah.
Like I think
I
about
was.
replaying this game, and I don't know if I would want to, like as much as say like an RE2 where it's kind of formulated where your first run takes 15 hours and your future runs will take 3, you know, but this
Yeah.
game doesn't feel like that. It's very much like more of
No.
a linear story kind of driven experience, which is fine, but it's a different kind of horror game.
Yeah, and the combat feels great as well. And like there are some sequences of the combat too that are really quite challenging and really kind of switch up the formula that might otherwise like be a bit kind of worn out at that sort of point in time.
Well, the
Going
first
to
game's
I-
really
horror,
bad for that.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
going to ask about that because I haven't played it at all, and the first is like one of my favorite games, just in terms of like what it is in the story. Like, is there a lot of like combat in this, or is it very much like similar to the first in the sense that it's more around? Why
I
is
would
it
say
more
there's
than
just
one
the
note? I
right
guess?
amount. Like there's enough that there's enough that it kind of brings pace to the game, but not enough so much as to kind of annoy you or kind of just like bog you down. And there are a couple of good kind of boss fights as well that kind of ask you to do things a little bit differently as well. Do
I
you feel the
think
same, James?
a little bit. Like I think that say if you were to compare just combat to say like RE4 or something, I feel like there's less enemy variety, less weapon variety. In general, the flow of combat is quite one note in Alan Wake 2.
Mm.
It's really just shining a light on shit and then shooting it. And then but they've got different things to shine lights on this time, you know. The bosses are good
This-
too, but I feel like Remedy has always been like a bit whatever with bosses, and I still do feel that way with Alan Wake 2. But I do think the variety of experiences in Alan Wake 2 make it kind of stand above the rest. Like in terms of like it's not afraid to just let you go and explore and investigate with Saga, or just switch over to Alan and kind of rewrite how this world is set up. Like it's that variety of experience I think that kind of makes it stand out more so. I don't think the combat in particular is like it's better than 1, and but that's such a low bar for me. Like I just didn't, it was literally just running around in a forest for 6 hours. Like it wasn't. That was literally what the first game
Literally,
was.
yeah.
Plus, there's a
I
little
guess-
bit in a nursing home or something. But
Yeah.
do you know?
I feel like
I
it's
don't
pretty
know.
comparable to like Last of Us kind of style combat, if that doesn't seem too crazy. Where it's like you don't maybe The Last of Us kind of you have more resources at your disposal. Even
I would argue The Last of
But-
Us is more stealth.
yeah, true.
driven.
Yeah, there's no real stealth
I
element
think-
to Alan Wake. Yeah,
I mean, Alan Wake, there is a little bit of stealth in Alan stuff with the way that the shadows and stuff work. But with
Yeah.
Saga, like you're just running through the forest and something's like, "Ugh," and then you're like, oh shit, Like, and then you're on edge, and then you kill it, and then there's that catharsis, and you just go and explore a bit. The tension builds up again. Like I feel
Yeah,
like
true.
the cadence of the whole experience is so different.
I
really
feel,
anything
I do,
else.
I do feel like James undersold the sound design a little bit with that impression. Like the sound design is so
No.
fucking good in this game, and if you're not playing with
Yeah,
like
it is.
a surround sound system, you're not doing it right. Because like you'll hear little twig branches like behind you, and like a bird kind of fly by, and it just really builds this really tense atmosphere in the game.
Not even that. Like if you're in the first chapter, I was just exploring a cabin, and like I kind of was walking backwards, and I knocked
Yeah.
something off the shelf, and it made a noise, and I
Yeah.
shat myself. But that was all me.
Yeah.
But it's just perfectly done. So
There's
Yeah.
some really cool tech. Like you've seen some of the developers have kind of shown some of the AI that they developed for it as well. Like the enemies will interact with objects and materials in the world, and if there's like a table in between you and them, they'll just like step and break through the table. Like really cool stuff. I did want to touch on the kind of brand of horror as well, because I think it works so well in the game that it's quite like quirky and absurdist at times. Like to give you an example, like there's this portion of the game that you go to like a theme park, like an abandoned theme park that's all like themed around coffee and stuff like that. And it's so weird, but works so well. And there's another point later in the game as well that's just wacky and wonderful, but I don't want to spoil that. So, but like it works and it's scary and it's engaging and it feels like part of the world despite being kind of left of field. I know, James, we were talking about like this particular brand of like North American horror, but I think it kind of times like around the lake and stuff as well,
Pacific
playing
Northwest,
Saga
I think you're
Story.
saying.
Yeah, that Northwest sort of horror. It actually feels quite Southern Gothic at times too, I thought. Kind of swampy and with the kind of cults and like the weird. I think it's that True Detective kind of like references kind of creeping in. But yeah, like this game, I feel like I could kind of talk at lengths about. I'm a little disappointed I didn't play the original Alan Wake going into this. I just watched like a recap video, which I feel like you kind of have to do. I feel like a basic knowledge of, I would say, both Alan Wake and Control going into this game is unfortunately required, which I noticed Brody called out in his review. But I would say don't
Yeah.
let
I
that
don't think
deter
that's
you
a-
from diving in regardless.
Yeah, he mentioned that to me, and that is what freaked me out initially. Because like I loved Alan Wake, but I haven't played it since it came out. And Control,
Yeah.
But it's a
I'll be honest in
sequel.
saying, yeah.
Like,
I do get your point, James. I just feel like I'm sad. Like if you
It's
do
also-
need that to enjoy it, because I feel like so many people would be coming to this without playing the original.
It's
Alan
also
Wake,
like
but that is
13
it's a
years.
them problem. Yeah, it's a them problem. And they
long
did a
time.
remaster.
But I also
it, so
love
it's not as
that
if
that's
it's stuck.
on the 13 years thing. I love that that's the real time as well. Like I love
Yeah,
that we've waited
that
13
is
years
really
and he's
cool.
been
Yeah.
missing for 13 years. Like that's a really cool thing, and it kind of really for me, obviously, who played the first one at launch, and now this one, that there is that it feels like a long wait and stuff.
And the game
but I-
opens
I
really
like that-
nicely.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like a lot of the things.
Oh, sorry, James.
Oh,
I think I cut you off.
Did you
Go
want
on.
to go? No, he's back. Yeah. Oh no, I thought you disconnected. But you were just being polite. No, I think I like that it needs prior knowledge. Like I feel like you can't weave these like really deep narratives and kind of just over explain everything to everybody in one game.
Yeah.
And like I would argue the Control stuff, you don't need to play Control. Like it's more just you pick up a note from the FBC and you're like, oh, it's like the FBC. Like you remember that. You know what? It's not like integral to the
Control
understanding of the experience.
contextualizes the whole idea of altered world events and stuff, though. Like, I feel
Absolutely, and I think that
and
that's going to
objects of
play a
power.
part in the DLC, like a very big part in the DLC.
You could play Control after this, I'm guessing, and it'd be cool that way as well.
Yeah.
Like you'd probably miss things
And-
Alan Wake, but
and I
it'd
think
be
the
cooler
key
for that
difference
knowledge.
there is if you played Control, it would be enjoyable. Like I feel like going back to Alan Wake 1 now, it is very rough. Like it is. I see so many people saying it's their favorite game, and not you, Shannon. I'm having a go at you. Don't worry.
Everyone
relax.
but me.
But
No,
people are saying
it was
it's their
very
favorite game,
repetitive,
and
but it
and
was
it's
cool.
so it was like it had a 10-year development cycle. They wanted it to be open world, then it wasn't. Like there were problems, and you can see them in that game. And this does feel like a lot of what they kind of wanted to do with that game, with the openness of, Cauldron Lake and Watery and Bright Falls. Like you can go and explore all of them whenever you want. Like that's great, and I feel like that is a real, like another thing that makes it so unique is not a lot of horror games let you do that. Let you kind of break that tension to go and explore. But when you do, it is still just as tense. But I don't think needing to play the first game is a bad thing for the second
No,
game.
yeah,
personally.
it's
Like,
not. It's just
I'm
like the
kind
way
of
it's
sick
handled.
of these games that are so like.
Like
Yeah,
I would have
it is-
liked, I
and-
would have
and 'cause
liked
it's
a
it
kind
is
of
a little bit
recap or
complicated, I guess.
something at the start of the
Um,
game. Like maybe there was some
Yeah.
way that they
when,
could have done.
when James
that,
told
but-
me
I am.
it didn't have one, I was like shocked by that.
I
'Cause, like,
am
they could have just
shocked,
wrapped
yeah.
it up nicely.
I'm shocked there's no video recap. Like I'm very shocked about that.
There was a
Um,
recap in Fortnite though. You can play that.
and they made
Imagine
a
if the
video,
game-
like
So I
it's
don't
on their
know-
YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Should have
Um,
been in the game.
I don't know if I would. It didn't quite entice me to download Fortnite, so I don't know how. I mean, will anything
How
do
was that
anything? I don't know.
experience, Kieran? Was it
It was
good?
weird.
Like,
Did
did
you
it
feel
give you
caught up, though?
context?
It
Like, was
actually
it...
like was better because I did try to replay Alan Wake not long ago in lead up to this, and I gave up on it because it is so janky and shit in like retrospect, like compared to
Poor
modern stuff.
Remedy.
Even the remaster,
No.
like that's really
What do you mean? They're at
surprising.
the top of their game
Yeah,
now.
like it just I wasn't feeling it, but Fortnite, the little Fortnite thing actually helped me kind of get my bearings on what was going on in this one. So
Okay.
like if you have that game installed, like jump into it and check it out. But otherwise,
Did you
I
wish
wouldn't. I
Ariana
probably
Grande
wouldn't
was
bother.
the lead in Alan Wake 2?
After playing her as the lead in Alan Wake 1? Yeah, definitely. I'll wait for the mods.
Dynamic.
I know you've been away, Karen, but do you plan to dive into Alan Wake 2 sometime soon?
Yeah, I'm like 7 hours in. I think.
Cool, nice.
I did spend a good chunk of that time like exploring the forest, the first opportunity I had. But yeah, no, I'm really liking it.
Yeah.
I
Even
was
like
talking to
those
James about it.
nursery rhymes that you have to solve in the forest
Yeah.
as well, like so
Yeah.
cool.
But
Yeah,
that
no,
is
without
so cool when you get to the witch. What's it called? The hut.
The hut,
The Witch
yeah.
Something
Finder?
hut. Yeah, and it's like a little like setup, and you can see the FBC's like
Yeah.
experimenting with that stuff. Like it.
Yeah, see,
There's
that's
little
what
elements of control in there that I love.
that's what we were talking about. I love that they have that framing for it now, and it sets them up to do some cool like anthology style stuff as well, with just like altered world events, just kind of covering them as a base of like why things happen the way they happen. I like it.
And again, I'm
As-
hesitant to avoid spoilers, but James, like they've confirmed that Quantum Break is like part of this universe as well, right?
So I think Microsoft still owns Quantum Break, so I don't think they're really allowed to.
Yeah. But like
But then I
they
also feel like
basically
no,
say it
well,
is,
absolutely,
right?
it's obviously an event in
Yeah.
one way. But
Yeah.
I feel like the same with Max Payne. Like Alex Casey's character has the same face as Max Payne and is voiced by the same guy as Max Payne, but he's not Max Payne. But it's also,
Right.
I think they're being quite clever here. I think with Alan
Yeah.
Wake 2 setting it in New York, they're getting a lot of shit done for the remake of Max Payne 1 and 2 that they're working on too. Kind of like how Capcom did Village for RE4. Like, I feel like that's definitely happening. But yeah, like the exploration stuff, like I remember I'm in my head, this is like burnt into my mind for some reason. Shannon a while ago said he loved how like God of War Ragnarok has like, you know, your main quest stuff, but then it kind of tells you can go this way to finish the quest or go off and do this side stuff. It does
Yeah.
all of that. It does that same kind of structure with exploration and all that. And I think it's a really, really good way to do it in this game because you can get lost for 1 to 2 hours after a chapter, kind of just thinking about what you've just seen because usually it's something fucked up. And then, you know, just collecting shit, getting your resources back because normally it's after an intense battle. So yeah.
And
Really
I do love the
quickly-
detective angle of it as well. Like it doesn't ask you to kind of make any deductions yourself. Like just by finding the right kind of collectible, essentially, it kind of pieces everything together that you need and
I think-
keeps you
yeah.
progressing the story. But I do like
think
the
the
way it
saga
kind
stuff-
of charts the progress of the game for you and helps you
Yeah.
kind of understand the story.
I have seen people say there's not much of a puzzle to it. I don't think it's meant to be. I think it's meant
No.
to be you're literally inside her mind, kind of drawing those connections and learning stuff. So you kind of learn with her in the same way that she
Yeah.
does, which I
And
think is a really
you're
clever
allowed
way to do it.
Guess and try and
especially with the
solve it
game.
yourself anyhow, but it's not a requirement of
Yeah.
the game progressing. Yeah.
Not at all. I think sometimes you have to actually physically put the photos on the wall to make some stuff happen. Like,
Oh yeah, you do, and
but-
you need to put them in the
yeah.
right spot. But it's like if you just wanted to apply guesswork, you could do that. Like it's not.
yeah,
hard.
no, absolutely. Like you don't get penalized or anything.
Yeah.
But like it's just a cool way to kind of, especially with a story that can be quite complicated. It is just a really good way to kind of keep the player on this. It's a smart way to keep them on the same path because it really is just a glorified quest log when you think about it. You're just
Yeah,
clicking
absolutely.
what quest you're doing and then recapping. But it's just you're kind of learning, but in a disguised way. I don't know. It's a really intuitive way to teach players stuff.
Mm.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, again, I haven't played it, but like, and it's got like a sea of 10s, but I have seen a few like 5 and 6s from like reputable outlets, like Eurogamer. I think gave it a 6.
Well, they're not
over-
reputable anymore. even
Well-
otherwise. No.
But like, why? Again, as someone who hasn't played it, and I've been trying to avoid as much as possible to jump into it properly soon. Like, why could people not have liked this or not have gelled with it? Do you think?
They might
Is that a
just not
weak
be into
question to
video
ask?
games. Like,
Yeah. Could it be they didn't play the first? Like, is that a simple answer?
I think that's
should just go
possible.
read
It
the
is
reviews, shouldn't
also
I?
like quite off the wall. Like if I don't know. There's this really nice note at the start of the game that says like it's kind of I'm not can't remember the words exactly, so I'm very much paraphrasing. But the general gist of it is that like sometimes in life like we don't fully understand things entirety, and like there's kind of mystery to things, and like we just need to keep going on without like fully understanding things. Very much not a direct quote, but anyhow, that's the gist of it. And I feel like some people really struggle with that, and like the story, you're kind of going through the motions a lot, like not really understanding what the hell is happening, but it's kind of in that like mystery that I've like really enjoyed it and just embraced that. But it is weird, and I can see that being difficult to engage with. Like, to give you an example of like how that then translates to game design, you can be on the roof of a building, go up a set of stairs, and then come out at ground level. And so it's like little things like that, like just kind of break your brain, but then it's kind of all part of the fake kind of nightmarish world that you as a player kind of have to navigate through at times.
I
Yeah.
also
and
think if
tonally
you
it
played
does a
the
bunch of
first
weird
game,
things. Sorry.
like I do think the combat could be tedious. Like, I don't, especially if you're not particular. I'm not. This is gonna sound like really up. I'm trying not to be up myself, but like
Just
if you're
because I
not,
said I liked Alan Wake, you're a hater. That's what I'm taking from this conversation.
that's not how it works. Nah, but that's not how our friendship works at all. Just so you know. No, I was just saying, if you're not particularly good at these types of games as well, I can imagine it would get frustrating, because I would go into one of these battles and stuff, and you kind of take everyone down and that's it. And I'm like, yeah, that was good. But if I had to like take everyone down, then die and repeat that, there's not a lot to the combat in terms of what you can do. It's really just shine a light and shoot them and stuff. But whereas, like, say with Control, if you died, you've still got like 5 powers, 5 guns, all this kind of stuff to kind of allay any of that frustration you might have from how repetitive it is. I also think it's got a lot of technical issues and bugs, which once again I've said have already been fixed. But if you had that, I mean, like, you've had that.
I've got
right?
a pretty
Like,
major one at the moment that is preventing me from finishing the game. Like, it's essentially it is a game breaking bug. Like, I can't finish it. So, but in saying that, like, I think you can tell I'm absolutely adore the game, and I'm just like patiently, or maybe not so patiently, waiting for a hotfix to be released to fix this bug that I've run into. I'm not the only one, based on what I can find on Reddit as well.
I also think when you're talking about meta stuff, that's always going to hit differently with people, right?
Yeah, totally agree. I don't think it is.
I think people are waiting for you to speak.
He's just gone.
I know. Let's hope this restores before What the Wiki this week, Ewan, or you're going to be...
Like I always feel like there's a huge like meta narrative here too. And I always think about the Scream movies where some people love or hate them with how self-aware they can be. And obviously I'm in the camp where like I love all that shit like to death. So like, I'm here for all of that.
Yeah, I feel like some people can get the sense, like same as Kojima's games that get low scores from a certain outlet. Some people just feel like they're self-indulgent or like overly self-indulgent, and it can be like this game already. Like as much as I've played, can veer into that territory, but I think it's earned.
Yeah, I mean, and then you think about I think it would rub a lot of people the wrong way that obviously Sam Lake has cast himself as Alex. And like some of the stuff that he does in this is like, I don't know how you get away with that. Like everyone was like, yeah, sure, just do whatever you want. But yeah, like I think it's great. I think it's endearing. I think he has like the creative gravitas to pull it off. So let him do whatever he wants.
Definitely.
He's earned it. Yeah.
And the art direction alone, like, just carries the game so far. Like, every scene is just breathtaking. I'm enamored with this game. Really hope I can finish it, that this patch rolls out sooner rather than later. Okay, To pivot to some sad news, sadly, Destiny developer Bungie is the latest in a string of studios to be hit by significant layoffs this year. News of the job cuts broke earlier today as a recording, with Bungie employees sharing their individual situations on social media, although the full extent of the redundancies is not yet known. Kieran, I'm going to come to you first on this question, seeing as you mentioned it before we started the show. Is this a sign that PlayStation are reevaluating their push towards live service games, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I did mention that. I guess it's hard to really kind of get a sense of that until they come out and say it officially, or talk about it in more context. But I feel like between kind of the Last of Us multiplayer game kind of just spinning away, and then this, and just the relative silence on some other stuff like the Horizon project, it feels like that big push that they were hyping up a couple of years ago just isn't happening. Yeah, and there's been obviously like a string of like live service games closing from other studios, and the outlook on that whole like sort of category of gaming doesn't look that great. So I feel like maybe there's a bit of a turn happening.
Yeah,
I do wonder if maybe they had obviously Suicide Squad had quite a big part in one of their presentations.
God, I
Yeah.
forgot
And
about
maybe
that.
and maybe they saw like the reaction to that. And I mean, I know that you wouldn't make a decision from one thing, but you know, it obviously would be a lot of things, but that would have also maybe been a catalyst for maybe
For sure.
like relaxing
It's
on that kind of
very,
thing.
very, and this isn't new, like we've all said this, it's risky when you're talking about like franchises like The Last of Us and Horizon. Like if those games come out, even if they're free, which I don't think they were going to be free, but even if they were free and tanked and then they closed it, like that's damaging to those brands when PlayStation, love them or hate them, like have been on a roll critically and sales wise with all of their big franchises. So it was always a weird decision to do that. But then it's sad if these projects are like nearly all finished and now they're never going to see the light of day. That's weird as well.
Yeah, I'm particularly upset if the Factions game never materializes as well. Yeah, well, I'm trying to remember, what was the other live service game that PlayStation announced recently? I think it was the one
The High
Wasn't it
Haven
like
Studio
7?
was.
The
Say
one with the
again,
dollar
James?
sign in the name.
Yeah, with the dollar sign in the name. Which one was
Oh
that?
yeah.
Like
I
Kesha.
cannot for the life of me remember what
Yeah,
that
like
game was
Kesha.
called.
Kesha's
It's
a game.
probably not a good thing.
Isn't it like Boss Rush or Boss Bitch or something?
PlayStation Studios presents
It doesn't
Boss
sound
Bitch, a
right.
Kesha story.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ooh. Fair Games?
No,
Is that
no,
it?
Fair Games.
Fair
that's the
Games.
one.
Fair
They-
Games.
I was close.
I don't know about that. Yeah, I do think that PlayStation is kind of in an awkward spot. Whether or not that fully explains this round of layoffs at Bungie, I'm not sure. Like, I wonder if it's just kind of the cycle and where Destiny 2 was at. Like, obviously they've done a whole string of expansions for that game, and maybe they're kind of at a point. I don't know if there's something planned next for Destiny 2, but perhaps like it's just kind of production starting to wind down on that. Like I get the studios kind of go through these cycles of scaling up and then scaling back, and before scaling
I
back
think
up
it's the
again.
last expansion coming, isn't it?
I'd have to think again. I know Destiny does have a real good base, but I'd have to think like it's trending down with
Yeah.
every release. Like it's been a long time,
Yeah.
and I know it does have its like core fan base, but it's not what it was when it first came out. I don't know. It's so sad. Like, and to even talk about this stuff, like nobody understands what's happening in businesses, and like it's obviously never right. But yeah, it's so hard without all the information.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I think
even
as
talk
part
about
of this
stuff.
as well, like the next expansion, the Final Shape was delayed, right? And Marathon as well.
Yeah,
So like
and
I think
Marathon, which is another live service game.
yeah. I wonder if, given the apprehension around live service stuff, like if they're just spending longer in kind of design and kind of pre-production phases, and maybe that's why they've scaled back staff a bit.
Bungie, I think Bungie shocked me when I saw this because, like, and it's not to say that other studios that have gone through redundancies aren't talented, but like you could pivot them to like a good story-driven game, like sci-fi or whatever it is, and like it would do well. Like this is like a lot of the original Halo teams, right? So like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's why it surprised me.
And
Even if
I
there
was
is a
gonna
pivot.
say, like, surely there's a temptation to do that at this point. Like, you have Spider-Man 2 come out, kind of set sales records. Obviously, Tears of the Kingdom did that earlier this year as well. Like, you have these amazing single-player games that become like these kind of global phenomenon and sell millions and millions of copies. Like, what? Like, the idea that it has to be a live service game to kind of sell in numbers the way that you want to just seems like an inaccurate theory. I don't know. Like I wonder how
We
much of
say
this
it
goes
all-
back to kind of the success of Destiny initially, or something like Fortnite, and we kind of have a couple of exceptions that people think are a rule.
We say it all
Yeah.
the time, but like with these games, you are competing for people's time. Like everyone
Yeah.
is getting home and putting, say, X amount of hours into, say, Apex for their dailies or Fortnite
Yeah.
or whatever. And obviously when Destiny 1 came out, and even Destiny 2, like I would argue it wasn't as big a thing. But now everyone has their own games. And it takes, like, there have been success stories, absolutely. But I feel like it takes a lot
Yeah.
to kind of break into this market already. Like, I feel like
Yeah.
if a publisher as big as Ubisoft can't do it, I mean, I would argue they've already done it with Siege and For Honor, but then they've tried with Hyperscape. You know, like there's all kind roller champions.
It's just like,
Yeah.
James, like you said, like there's never been more things competing for time. And also, again, I think I said this a month or so ago, like COVID, like that was hugely overinflating things like people playing
Yeah.
games that, and just how much, like if we think even to us, like, or me, like I was playing games like 24/7.
Yeah.
Because I
And
was
money
home
that you might have
24/7.
otherwise spent on like events that you would go and leave your
Yeah.
house for, you were spending on
Yeah,
in-game
exactly.
events. Yeah.
And that is just the nature of like no one knew what was coming, and like that was like a 2-year stint of that, and now it's shifted quicker than anyone thought it would back to
Yeah.
what it was pre-COVID.
And there's
that has
chatter as well at the
repercussions for
moment of
any
like
business.
venture capital and investment and stuff like drying up a bit in the industry at the moment. And I think this is probably all a sign of that as well, right? Like that same sort of reaction
Yeah,
to a
it's
post-COVID world.
it is super sad, and like because some of these, like all of these these publishers and developers, like we have these fun memories with, whether it be like Halo or Destiny, and that's what you think about
Yeah.
at the end of the day. Like it's sad.
Yeah. Hopefully that puts them in good stead to get picked up by other studios. But yeah, always grim news to hear this sort of thing occurring. Let's pivot again, though, and talk about Metal Gear Solid 3 Remake, which Konami showed off some in-engine footage of at the Xbox Partner Showcase in the past week, where they also confirmed that the game is running on the Unreal Engine 5. Shannon, going to come back to you on this one, because we, again, spoke about this in the week. Given that the Master Collection has just come out, do you think this is a bit of a kind of odd time to be promoting this upcoming remake?
It was odd purely because, and I could be wrong, like I think the reviews dropped like the night before this happened, or like for us
Yeah.
it was like within the 24-hour period, and like I saw people confused being like, is this the Metal Gear Solid 3 in
And all the
that collection,
dialogue
or is
was
this gonna be
like,
updated to that?
yeah, like why doesn't this game like support higher
Yeah.
frame rates and resolutions?
Yeah, it was, and because like Konami haven't really done anything in the gaming space for 5 years, like to then do this in a 24-hour period was just bizarre to me. Just really weird. I wonder if they thought it'd have like a reverse effect in sales or something, or maybe it just fell that way for whatever reason. But given this was like the one standout thing of that show, it felt odd to have it that close. Weird.
Timing aside, what did you make of what we were able to see, Kieran?
Yeah, I mean it looks faithful to Metal Gear Solid 3, I guess. You always kind of
I don't know.
well, all right. I wasn't.
That was
I didn't want. I didn't want you to throw to me purely because James hadn't had his say yet.
Yeah.
You needed to gauge
No,
what
but, like-
James is going to say first.
It looks like a game where they've
Pretty.
looked enough at the original and gone, all right, this is what it should look like in the modern time. But I feel like it just like any kind of modern remake, well, not any. Resident Evil, I guess, is a different example, but it just feels like it loses some of that charm and personality just in the translation. Like it's just been put through a filter where it's like,
Imagine it was like
2023, 24.
Yeah, imagine it was that, but then had that like green shit all over it. Like it looked like someone had wiped their ass with it. Essentially, like people would be revolting against that. Like the mass population of people would be like,
Okay,
what the hell
so
is this?
You're being,
But I
like,
get the other side of it.
incredibly. Nah, you're being incredibly disrespectful. It's not. Yeah,
It's not green
absolutely.
shit.
on Kojima's name. How
No,
dare
like
speak
I know
ill
what
of it.
you're saying. Like, look at all of you
Of
right
course
now.
I
Go into the
get
chat
the other
and
side of
and
it.
look at this video that
Yes,
I've
I'm
posted,
watching
just
it.
so you can see what I'm looking at. Like, I know, I know what you're saying in terms of it looks like someone wiped their ass with it. Like, I get that, but like, I genuinely feel in this game, like with the Delta footage, there's no like that forest on the left on the in the PS2 version. It looks like humid. It looks hot. Do you know what I mean? It
Moist,
looks,
if you will.
yeah, it has character. And I know that sounds wild, but like, but then I look at the one on the right and it's literally just like it could be anything. Like, do you know what I mean? It
Yeah.
could be any game. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
No, or you,
color grading is an artistic choice, and it's like used to good effect in a lot of those older games.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Could
like,
it
people-
be like
yeah,
if they just did a filter and like you could choose between it? I feel like that might be better because
I don't think it's a filter. I think it's literally an artistic choice. And this is another thing I think about with like SH like Silent Hill 2 remake is so much of that game's like grittiness came from the fact that it kind of looked shit. Like that was the idea. And I'm not asking them to make a new game look shit, like obviously, but I'm also asking them to maybe recognize what that character is. Like there is character in the green shit picture that Shannon doesn't like. Like there's
I never said I
there's-
didn't like it. I was just stating facts.
Well, you said it looks like someone wiped their ass with it, so I'm assuming
You
like you and
He's got a point,
Um,
Shannon. What do you find when someone's wiping their ass?
Yeah,
yeah, is that something you like?
Game of the year.
Is
No,
that-
I
is that a
totally get
compliment? Is that
James's
what you
point.
tell
Like
people you
it's
like?
lost all its personality. Like it looks like just engine footage running with nothing applied to it, essentially. Which again, I'm sure that's oversimplifying it, and that's being disrespectful to the work that's here. It's one of those situations where you're never going to win, I think, and maybe you just don't remake it if it loses all of its identity.
I don't think that's like I'm not one of those people who you're never going to win with me. Like I feel like I'm quite reasonable. Like RE2 and RE4, like I enjoyed
Yeah.
those remakes. Like they have the same spirit as the original. Like
they
they're
paid you a
still-
lot of money to like those remakes, though.
Apparently,
It's different because like you're talking about like these like we're looking at a crocodile here. Like one has green shit on it, one doesn't. Like it's
Oh
not
my
It's
God.
like
not
a
about-
Resident
look
Evil
further, like
fucking
than the
enemy.
crocodile. It's
No,
it's
I-
not about the crocodile.
I'm actually on James's side here. I think like it is something to the kind of like filtering of filter, maybe not the right word, but like
It's not a filter. It's
it's the like the
the
color
sky
temperature
even.
of like and I wonder if it even is like a lighting shift on the remake. Like maybe that's like too white a light, and it needs to be kind of like a
Look,
warm.
I
Like
can't
the
tell with
sun's
that
rays
green-
need
that
to be
green
warmer, but
Filter. There's no lighting there. For
it's
me.
not selling the
Oh,
humid
there's-
environment. I guess if that's. I don't know if I would get so hung up about the lack of humidity in the in-game engine that I would be like,
I'm not getting hung. I'm getting more hung up about Shannon being so like unwilling.
Obviously, I'm just tripling down now that you're annoyed.
No,
I get it.
No,
There should be a middle ground somewhere, and it doesn't feel like they've attempted to even recreate it. To be honest,
I also think this is it's interesting because it is like a game that is incredibly Kojima-esque without Kojima. Like and even in that trailer, you don't see there's none of that. There's not even putting aside what it looks like. There's no character to kind of that look, you know.
I did think, and again, like, is just because this is like in-engine footage and like the first footage, like, have they not done all the other stuff to make it feel? But I guess that's their fault for showing it right. But do you know what I'm saying? Like, is
Yeah.
it still that early of a stage that it's just they haven't done? Because this isn't gameplay; it's like the first in-engine footage.
I would have to think that this is like pretty indicative of the look and feel of the
But
game.
that looks like what it would play. That's what I
Yeah.
would. If I were to buy this game, that's what I would expect it to look like, just with menus over the top of it and the camera, obviously.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's, I don't know. I just
don't know, I
think
feel
these
like-
UE5, when you see on YouTube, like
It looks they all
Zelda
look the
running
same.
on UE5,
Yeah,
and they all
it
look
has
the
this
fucking
look.
the lighting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, I don't know. Maybe
It does kind of look like one of those games where someone's gone like fan made a video of like what a game would look like in UE5.
Yeah,
Well, it is
And-
that.
I
isn't
mean,
it,
maybe that's just the
essentially?
Well,
nature
yeah.
of things looking more realistic.
just lots of fans.
I mean, like you travel.
Just hundreds of them
A
in
group
one
of them.
room.
being paid.
Well, this was one of these topics I didn't really think we were going to have a huge amount to talk about, but
I knew
here
we
we are
would, because I
talking
knew
about
Shannon would
people
have
wiping their
some
arse
comment
over video
about how
games.
Because
I'm
I
worried about it too
represent
much.
like the
Oh,
everyday
come on.
gamer.
Wow.
I'm
Oh, okay.
your EB Games customer. That's actually I'm not going to say that. That's
Yeah,
not
what?
good for me.
Let's go to a rapid fire question instead then. Capcom have teased that they have at least one unannounced game coming before March 2024. This came about, I think, in like a shareholder kind of conference, some sort of internal presentation, that sort of thing, where they were trying to explain the difference between the sales that they've so far achieved this year and versus where they think they're going to hit, and they reckon they've got something up their sleeve that's going to close the gap and help them hit their sales targets. But my rapid fire question for you was, what game do we think this will be? Kieran, perhaps we start with you. You love it when I throw to you first, apparently. So,
Yeah, it's weird. Like, it's weird that they
what
would have
game,
something
Kieran? This is
completely-
rapid fire.
Monster Hunter.
Nah, I'm turning it into a topic. Yeah.
James.
I just think like when they say massive,
Ugh.
like for them, shut up, Ewan. It's either a Resident Evil or a Monster Hunter game, right? Like they said it's massive, and it's before, but then it's before March. It's like 5 months away.
Yeah, but
like
Yeah.
But they're not going to say it's like
Shannon, here
they're
he
not going to say,
comes.
"Oh, we've got a shit game coming before March."
Yeah, it's their investor
No.
report. Like,
No,
Like,
but
what are you?
they're trying to justify their business decisions to their investors. They're going to hype it up.
It's coming, but we
It's
don't know
definitely.
how it's gonna
I
go.
think it's Onimusha, like just based on leaks, and I feel like it's time. And there's like a Netflix thing, isn't there, or something?
You think that's going to
And-
make $20 million?
I don't know.
Do you even know what Onimusha is, Shannon?
I have played. Yes, I did play them
Oh,
back in the
okay,
day.
good. I'm
Um,
glad.
was a fan. 20 million isn't a lot, is it?
Units or dollars?
Dollars. I don't feel
Units.
like
It's
okay,
units.
Wow.
Yeah,
Well,
they're
that
trying to
must
sell.
be
Yeah,
Monster
I
Hunter-
didn't mean to
Monster
say
Hunter
dollars.
then. Well, that's settled. End of conversation. It's been a while since the Monsties rised up.
No, that's another game.
Okay.
I could
Do
see
we
Monster
know-
Hunter for like Switch 2 and next gen or something.
Yeah, both. Okay, no. It's just occurred to me that I still to play the DLC for remake, but yeah.
Disgusting.
But I don't even no Resident Evil games doing 20 million even. Like there's nothing else Capcom that
I
would do
mean,
that.
I don't think Capcom are putting out a game that's going to do 20 million like in this time. I think the
They
sales
better start
targets
overhyping it.
aside, yeah. I mean, for my sake, I hope it's another Resident Evil game, but that's all I really have to say on the matter. Let's go to What the Wiki, the Press Up podcast game show with the previous week's winner. Reads part of a Wikipedia page
Can I
for
just
an unknown
say,
game. Yes.
Monster Hunter World is on 23 million. Just so you know.
Yeah. that
Monster Hunter
checks out
World
now.
is on 20 million.
23. Because you were like, I
ha-
don't think Capcom can make a game that sells 20 million. And you're
When
wrong,
did-
Ewan.
How much did that game how many units of that game like sold in its first couple of months?
I mean, I don't have the week by week breakdown, but I've got the total amount for you. So
Because that's what they're
I don't think the
trying to
goal
do,
is
right?
for them to sell 20 million in a week.
I mean, they have other games they're still selling in that period as well. So, like, it's
Yeah,
not all
fair.
that one title.
Yeah.
yeah, Ewan.
I'm happy to
just
take
need
a
to-
bet if you want.
No, I'm not doing anything with you.
I'm not convinced Capcom's going to close the gap, regardless what game they put out.
So okay.
It's
Anyway,
a big hill to
back to
climb.
your hosting.
Anyhow, What the Wiki is the Press Start podcast game show with the previous week's winner. It's part of a Wikipedia page for an unknown game, and we, the contestants, must guess the game. A point is awarded for each correct guess, with the round ending after someone bags themselves 2 points. Currently in the lead, we have Brody and James tied on 29 points each. Shannon hot on their heels with 27 points. Kieran in third on 25, myself in fourth with 23, and Harry and James will be bringing up the rear with a point each. As last week's winner, Shannon is in the hosting chair today. Shannon, you ready to take it away?
I am. This was going to be a round suggested by Ewan's brother. I don't know if he's a fan of the show or not, but anyway, he
is.
didn't respond until about 5 minutes ago. So maybe in a future episode. when I proceed.
File them away.
Yes. The objective of this game is to collect time clocks to progress through
Ooze.
different eras via the time machine. In Nowhere, which acts as the tutorial level, the character will learn his basic moves he needs to use to progress through the game. He can kick, jump, pick up objects, roll, jump into holes to move underground, tiptoe to avoid alerting other enemies, climb ropes, and use his ears like propellers to slowly descend to the ground from high places.
It's...
The character can also move some objects to get to certain places. Enemies in the game are mostly simple to beat. Some can be defeated with a kick or a jump, while others may require the character to be chased by an enemy until they run out of breath.
James. It's not like
Yes.
Looney Tunes Acme Assault or something, is it?
No,
No?
it's not.
Okay.
On the right track,
It's
but
like-
no cigar.
It's like I'm gonna just throw a title out there because I can visualize the game, but I don't know the title. It's like Bugs Bunny in Time.
Yeah, I think
It's
I'm
close,
gonna pay,
right?
I'm gonna pay that. I think,
You don't have
Aw.
to.
unless anyone else
No
can.
pay.
Ewan can still try to cobble something
No,
together.
Kieran always does this. He's always like, no, give it to someone else. Just give it to Kieran.
Yeah.
Sweep in.
Well, I didn't get
pick
it
up
right.
the
That's like
scraps.
I'm trying
Is
to.
anyone
I'm trying to
else
respect
gonna-
the sanctity of
I'm
the
not going to
competition.
do any better than.
It's only
Kieran's
missing a
guess.
word.
Yeah,
technically.
do you know
so if
what? I
anyone
won't.
else-
No, I won't get that. So I reckon give it to
It's
Kieran.
Bugs Bunny Lost in Time. Well done,
Lost in
Kieran.
Time.
That was
Lost
a
in
good
Time.
guess.
There you go.
Very good game.
I don't know if I want to ask how
Yeah.
the two of you are so familiar with that game, but there we go.
Do you guys
That was a
know I
Is
dressed
there
up as
shaman
Bugs
playing
Bunny
it?
once?
You dressed up
Did
as
you?
Bugs Bunny.
Yeah,
Have
when
you
I
got
was
that
5.
costume now?
When you were
I wasn't
5.
fit to be.
Good luck.
Yeah, I was 5. So, yeah.
All right, game
I
number
still love
2.
the carrot.
The game is a platform game that is viewed from a third-person perspective. Players traverse several different environments to advance through the game. During the game, players control a robot who is reduced to a crawling microchip during a ship crash and is losing energy.
James.
Yes, James.
So predictable, Shani. Is it Space Station Silicon Valley?
It is. Space Station, Silicon
fuck.
Valley. Another
Remember that game?
classic, isn't it?
I have a fun fact about that game.
I just used to always could never
No,
remember the
let me
name
say
of
my
it.
fun fact.
Go for it. Did you also dress up as a microchip?
I dressed up as the
crawling?
microchip. No, that's the GTA 3 team.
There you go. There's a lot of yeah. I could
Ah.
see that.
Mm.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's a really good game. Someone should remake that.
Rockstar.
Yeah,
Cancel GTA 6.
yeah,
Yep.
agree.
Space Station,
Um,
Silicon Valley.
Game number 3. I'm realizing now I didn't really give you a chance, Ewan, but that's Aaron's
No.
fault, so I blame him.
For being born. on
The
wrong
game's
time.
plot takes place in 1886, 500 years.
Ewan. Oh, wait. Did you say 1886?
Yeah,
I'm going to guess the order 1886.
that's a
that
great
it?
guess.
And
but
then you
it's
said
not.
something about
It's
500.
I actually thought it was.
That's pretty
Um,
good.
500 years after, I think the original game. A wealthy industrialist and sorcerer. What am I saying?
I love Shannon trying to read things.
Discovers the enemy because I'm literally making this up based on what I'm reading because I don't know. A wealthy
Oh my god.
Why did I just go back to read that same bit that I couldn't read the first time? A character
Can we read-
discovers a spell book and casts its spell of raising the dead over the city of London. However, the pages of the book soon scatter across London.
James.
And yes, James.
Is it Hellgate, London? No.
1886. No, it's not. Why did I? You know what? I'm going to go back and get a better section of this.
Of a different section of the Wikipedia page.
The game is a 2000 action-adventure game developed by SCE Cambridge and published by Sony Computer Entertainment. It is the second installment in the
Kieran.
franchise.
Oh, fuck.
Yes, Kieran.
No.
Is it Medieval 2?
It is Medieval 2. Well
Yeah.
done, Kieran. So how I went wrong is
Wow.
I didn't want to read character
We
names.
know
I
how
didn't
you
know
went
if they
wrong.
were like main characters, enemy. Like I didn't have any context for who they were in the world. So I just failed poorly. But well done, Kieran.
Well
They
done, Kieran.
Were just a smattering of some of my childhood favorite PS1 games.
Yeah, nice.
Bugs Bunny in particular, like I always think of playing that a lot. I don't know why, but
Yeah. It was that
Almost as
and
much as
Sheepdog
Ape
and Wolf
Escape.
for me.
yeah.
So after that, James climbs away from Brody, so cementing his spot in first place with 30 points, just one ahead of Brody. And Kieran, you moved up to tie with Shannon in third place with 27 points. Heaps of movers and shakers on the What the Wiki leaderboard. But with that, let's bring an end to what was this week's episode of the Press Start podcast. Subscribe to us on Listener or the podcast service of your choice at Press Start. Hang on. So it's been a while since I've done this, James. I'm out of practice. Subscribe to us on Listener,
It's
the
hard.
podcast, or the podcast service of your choice. Follow us at press.au and visit the site at press.com.au. We've been joined today by Shannon.
Yeah, you can follow me at Shannon Grixty on all the
Also
things.
joining us today, it was James.
Yes, you can find me on X at James ATJMZ.
What is it called this week? I forget. And bagging the points, it was Kieran.
Yeah, I'm on X, HASH_BRAUN.
And I've been your host, Ewan Roxburgh. You can follow me at Ewan_Roxburgh. Thanks again for tuning in. And until next time, happy gaming.
Bye.
Bye.